Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today by asking you to just kind of visualize something with us.
Set the scene.
Right, set the scene. So it's a standard Friday night. You're tired. You're sitting in your living room. The year is 1966.
Good year.
Yeah, and there's this humidity in the air because, it's late August in Elmira, New York, and you're watching a woman, Jane Roberts, sitting in a rocking chair.
And she is completely exhausted.
Exactly. She's yawning. She can barely keep her eyes open. She has absolutely no idea that in about, 5 minutes, her conscious mind is going to step aside and a personality calling itself Seth is going to come through and basically completely dismantle the concept of linear time.
It really is the classic setup for the Seth material. It's the mundane meeting the miraculous.
Yeah.
You have the crickets chirping outside, the coffee's brewing, and then suddenly the secrets of the universe are just being dictated right there in the living room.
It's crazy. And today we are looking at session 282 that was recorded on August 31st, 1966.
Right.
We have the transcript right in front of us from the early sessions, Book 7, which is published by the New Awareness Network.
It's a dense one, too.
It really is. And our mission for this deep dive is a bit unusual. Usually we look at how to optimize your current life, productivity, health, that sort of thing. But today, based on this specific text, we are asking, what about the lives you didn't choose?
The road not taken.
Right, the road not taken. Because we all have that one decision, right? That fork in the road. Like if I had gone to art school instead of law school, or if I had married my high school sweetheart.
Or taken that one-way ticket to Tokyo.
Yeah. And we think of those as fantasies. They're gone. Poof. But the document we're analyzing today argues that those versions of you didn't vanish. They are waking up, they're drinking coffee and going to work right now, just in a different room of the mansion.
It's a concept that Seth calls the mobility of consciousness. And looking at the notes here, it's fascinating because Jane was so tired that night.
Which actually helps, right?
Exactly. Usually when the conscious mind is just physically exhausted, the ego's guard drops. It allows for a cleaner signal. And what came through that night is a really dense technical explanation of how we exist in multiple probabilities simultaneously.
And it's not just abstract philosophy either. We're going to get into a specific case study involving Jane's husband, Rob. Seth looks at him and basically says, hey, remember when you wanted to be a doctor? Well, you are one.
That part gives me chills every time I read it, because it takes the multiverse concept completely out of quantum physics and puts it right into our personal biographies.
So to you listening right now, buckle up. Because we are going to talk about ghosts. We're going to talk about the literal physics of flying in dreams. And we're going to find out why your daydreams might actually be memories from another life.
It's going to be a heavy session, but we're going to try and keep it grounded.
Definitely. And just a quick housekeeping note before we really jump in. This podcast is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
We are here to explore, not to sell.
Exactly. So let's dive in.
Let's do it.
I want to start with the first section of the notes where Seth addresses the transition of death. Now, usually when we consume media about the afterlife, it's very binary.
Heaven or hell.
Right. You go to the good place or you go to the bad place. Or maybe you just fade to black and that's it. But Seth describes a specific phase immediately post-death that I found just incredibly specific. He calls it a period where the connection to matter is broken, but, and I'm quoting here, not entirely severed.
It's a transition zone. You can think of it like a decompression chamber for the soul. He actually uses the word hovers.
Yeah, that word stood out to me.
Right. The personality hovers within the physical system. This implies that death isn't just an instant ejection seat into a realm of angels. You are still untethered, but you're adjacent to the physical world.
Hovers. That is such a spooky word in this context. It implies this total lack of grounding. It almost reminds me of a glitch in a video game where the character is just floating a few feet off the floor,
Yeah, just stuck in the collision mesh.
Exactly. But what are they doing while they hover? Because they aren't just floating around aimlessly. Seth describes a process of, remixing.
That's a really great way to put it. Seth says the personality is free to use its past experiences, so all the different lives and lessons it has accumulated, and blend them. He uses an artistic metaphor here, saying they use these experiences, quote, as you use colors.
I really want to drill down on that. As you use colors, if I'm a painter, I take blue and yellow to make green. So this implies that after I die, I'm not just this current version of me anymore. I'm taking the experience of me, mixing it with the experience of, say, a soldier from 1860 or a mother from 1400, and creating a totally new shade.
Precisely. It's a retrospective integration. You're looking at the massive data set of your existence and synthesizing it to form the basis for your next step.
So it's not a judgment.
No, not at all. It's not Judgment Day where some guy with a beard weighs your heart against a feather. It's a self-review. You are the artist of your own identity. You are deciding what parts of your history you actually want to accentuate in the next painting.
That sounds lovely, actually. Very empowering. But, and this is where the text gets a bit darker, maybe a bit more campfire ghost story, this mixing process requires that you actually have colors to mix.
Right. This is the part that touches on the nature of stagnation. Seth talks about what happens if no lessons were learned.
If someone just refused to grow.
Right. If a personality lived a life of total stagnation or was so obsessed with one singular idea or grievance that they couldn't see anything else around them.
He says the personality might, quote, psychically relive past experiences.
And this is the actual mechanism behind what we traditionally call a haunting.
Oh, wow.
If you haven't processed your experiences, you can't integrate them. So instead of mixing the colors to paint a new picture, you just keep staring at the old picture. You get stuck in a loop.
A loop. I
Yeah.
mean, that sounds like my personal definition of hell. Just replaying your worst decisions or your traumatic moments over and over.
It sounds awful. But Seth is very careful here. He doesn't call it hell. He calls it a private system. And he explains that this psychic reliving usually produces no actual return to physical events.
Meaning they aren't physically there.
Right. They aren't there pushing buttons or rattling chains in the way we usually think. But it is a reenactment that is so strong, it can trigger sensual data in our world.
So they are so lost in the memory that they project it outwards.
Exactly. Just imagine you had a terrible argument that you never resolved. You might replay that argument in your head for a week.
Sure, we all do that.
Now imagine you don't have a physical body to distract you from it. You don't have to go to work. You don't have to eat. You just have the argument. That focus becomes total. And that intensity leaves a mark on the atmosphere.
And that's what creates the ghost. Like the lady in white walking down the hallway at 3 a.m.
Sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Seth actually breaks down the taxonomy of ghosts here, which I think is incredibly valuable because pop culture tends to lump everything paranormal into just one big bucket. He says there isn't just one type of ghost.
Yeah, let's separate these out because he basically gives us a list here.
Correct. First, you have the reenactment. This is what we just described. The personality isn't really there in the sense that they are looking at you and thinking, ooh, nice wallpaper.
Right, they aren't perceiving the present.
No. They're just projecting a memory so strongly that it creates a form. It's like a holographic recording left in the atmosphere.
So if I see that type of ghost, I'm basically watching a 3D movie of someone's trauma. I can't talk to it.
You can try, but it won't answer you. It's a recording. It's just an echo. But then, and this is fascinating, Seth mentions secondary constructions.
Secondary constructions. Yeah, this one completely blew my mind because this implies that we create the ghosts.
Yes. If your own emotional projection is strong enough, or often in the dream state, you can create a form that has temporary validity. It's a fragment of your own psyche given a semi-physical shape.
That's honestly terrifying. It's like 3D printing your own fears.
Right.
So I could be haunted by a ghost that is actually just my own anxiety walking around my bedroom.
In Seth's view, yes. The boundaries between mental and physical are much more porous than we think. We tend to think thoughts are stuck inside the skull and objects are outside. But Seth says thoughts become objects if the intensity is high enough.
That puts a lot of responsibility on us to keep our thoughts tidy, doesn't it?
It certainly does. But there is a third category, which is perhaps the most interesting and maybe the most comforting. He calls them the visitors.
The tourists.
The tourists. Personalities from other systems, maybe the dead, maybe just travelers from other dimensions who are literally just passing through.
And do they know we are here? Are they looking at us?
Not always. Seth says they might not even be aware they are in your system.
How does that work?
It's like radio frequencies bleeding over. You might hear a snippet of a broadcast from a neighboring station on your radio. That doesn't mean the DJ on that station is talking to you. They're just doing their show. You just caught the bleed through.
It really strips the fear out of it, doesn't it? I mean, standard ghost stories are designed to make you feel threatened. The ghost wants you out of the house. The ghost is angry. But Seth's explanation is almost bureaucratic.
Yeah, it's very clinical.
It's just mechanics. It's energy, loops, and frequency bleed.
It completely demystifies the unseen. It stops being supernatural and starts being natural, but just not yet understood by current science. It turns the haunted house from a place of terror into a place of really complex physics.
Speaking of things not understood by current science, I want to pivot to the absolute bombshell of this session. We've set the stage with the afterlife, but now Seth brings it right into the living room. He starts talking to Rob Jane's husband about his career.
This is where the rubber really meets the road.
Mm.
Because up until now, we're talking about general theories. But here, Seth gets deeply personal.
For the listener who maybe doesn't know, Robert Butts is an artist. He paints commercial art, he paints fine art. He is the one sitting there scribbling down these notes in shorthand while Jane paces around the room in a trance. And suddenly, Seth addresses him directly and says, essentially, you would have made an excellent doctor.
Imagine hearing that. You're in
Yeah.
your 40s, you're a painter, you're struggling to pay the bills sometimes, and a multidimensional entity tells you that you missed your calling as a physician.
My immediate reaction would be defensiveness. I'd be like, excuse me, I'm a great artist. Are you saying I failed? Are you saying I wasted my life?
That is exactly the fear. But that's the beauty of it. Seth isn't saying he failed. He isn't saying he should have been a doctor in place of being an artist. He is saying he is a doctor.
This is the concept that just breaks the brain. Let's unpack the timeline Seth lays out here. Because he says that Rob, in this physical life, had the aptitude and the sheer desire to be a doctor, but he didn't have the money.
Right. Financial limitations in the physical world block that path. Standard story, right?
Mm.
We all have dreams we simply can't afford. Rob leaned toward medicine subconsciously, but practical limits stopped him here.
But Seth argues that the desire and the intent were strong enough to actually create a reality. He says that over a period of 3 years, within a dream framework, Rob actually worked out this
It
possibility.
worked out. It sounds like a simulation, but Seth insists it was more than imagination. He calls it, quote, a literally future life that existed as a definite possibility.
So let's trace this. Rob is sleeping, his body is in Elmira, but his consciousness is off attending medical school in a probable reality.
Yes. For 3 years of our time, Rob spent his dream state living the life of a medical student. He learned the anatomy. He dealt with the blood. He dealt with the long hours. He dealt with the emotional toll of saving and losing lives.
So he basically test drove the car before buying it.
Exactly. And this leads to the concept of the backing off. Rob, in the dream state, experienced the actual reality of being a doctor and decided, you know what? This isn't for me right now. He chose to be an artist in this physical focus.
But here's the kicker. He didn't kill the doctor timeline.
No, you
No,
can't
he-
destroy energy. That probability, once it was energized by his focus, continued. Seth says the physician Rob exists in another dimension right now. He has his own ego. He treats patients.
He has his own ego. That means he thinks he is the real Rob.
He absolutely does. He has memories, he has a practice, he has a life that is just as valid as the one Rob the artist is living right now.
And the detail that really got me, and this is where it gets really trippy, Seth says that some of these people you also know in the life that you chose.
Just think about the implications of that for a second.
I'm trying to. It implies we travel in packs. Like, if Rob is a doctor in Universe B, then his friends or family from Universe A might be his patients in Universe B.
It suggests a massive interconnected web of probabilities. We aren't isolated individuals branching off into nothingness. We are ensembles. If the script changes for the lead actor, the supporting cast shifts roles to accommodate that new narrative.
So my best friend in this life might be my Bach in another life, or my enemy, or my patient.
Or your spouse, or a stranger you pass on the street. The roles shuffle, but the entities, the core consciousnesses, remain connected. It's like a repertory theater company. Same actors, different play. Tonight we're doing Hamlet, tomorrow we're doing a Midsummer Night's Dream, but it's the exact same troupe.
It reframes the concept of regret entirely. I mean, we spend so much time agonizing over choices. If I had taken that job in London, if I hadn't broken up with Sarah, Seth is saying you did take the job, you did stay with Sarah.
It creates a tremendous sense of relief, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If value fulfillment is the goal, if the soul wants to experience all facets of reality, then you aren't missing out on anything. You are just focusing on this specific track while another part of you handles the other tracks.
It's like watching a movie. You can't watch the comedy channel and the horror channel on the same TV screen at the exact same time. You have to pick one, but that doesn't mean the horror movie isn't playing somewhere else.
And Seth would say you actually are watching both. You just only have the conscious memory of one at a time. Unless the signals cross.
Mm.
Which brings us to how these probable selves relate to each other. Because Seth drops a really funny, kind of profound detail about the Dr. Rob.
Oh, I loved this part. The Dr. Rob dreams of being a painter.
Yes. In that other probability, the doctor comes home from the hospital, exhausted, falls asleep, and dreams of a life where he lives in Elmira, New York, and paints pictures. And to him, that is the fantasy. That is his road not taken.
So we are literally each other's dreams.
Seth says explicitly that you call his system an alternate system of probability. But this is precisely what he would call your system. It's relativity applied to existence. There is no prime timeline. We always think we are the real ones because we feel the chair under our butt and we taste the coffee. But the Dr. Rob feels his chair and tastes his coffee just as vividly.
It's humbling. It completely destroys the ego's need to be the center of the universe. We're just one facet on a disco ball.
A disco ball is actually a great metaphor. Many mirrors reflecting light in totally different directions, but all part of the same sphere. And the light source inside is the core identity.
I want to get a little technical here because Seth gives us some physics to explain how this works biologically. He uses the phrase, quote, two limbs from the same tree.
Right. He's trying to explain the biological and spiritual connection.
Okay.
Artist Rob and Dr. Rob share the same root, or trunk, the core entity, but they have grown in different directions. Seth mentions that they would look similar, but not identical.
Because of, wait, molecular structure?
Yes. Seth often talks about how different systems of reality have different vibratory rates. The matter in a probable system isn't quite the same as our matter. It might be less dense or vibrate at a different frequency entirely. So Dr. Rob might be slightly taller or have a different hair color because the physical laws of his system are slightly tweaked.
This leads to the big question of why. Why go to all this trouble? Why split into a million versions of yourself? It sounds exhausting for the soul. Seth uses the term value fulfillment. Can you define that for the listener? Because he uses it a lot in his books.
Value fulfillment is the drive of consciousness to explore every single aspect of its potential. Think of a rose seed. The value of that seed is only fulfilled if it grows roots, a stem, leaves, and eventually a flower. It has to express everything contained within it.
So if I have the potential to be, say, a great criminal and a great saint,
The entity wants to understand both. But you can't be a saint and a serial killer in the same physical body, generally speaking. It's contradictory. So the consciousness splits. In one probability, you explore the absolute depths of selfishness. In another, the heights of altruism.
and together the whole self learns the complete lesson.
Exactly. Reincarnation, which lives in time, is one way to learn. Probable lives, which are lives in parallel, are the other way. We usually only focus on reincarnation, past lives, future lives. But Seth says the vertical system of parallel lives is just as important.
It's 3D chess versus 2D checkers. We're thinking in straight lines, and he's thinking in spheres.
And this actually explains why we sometimes feel those bleed-throughs. Have you ever met a stranger and felt an instant, completely irrational familiarity? Or walked into a new city and felt like you somehow knew the map?
All the time. Deja vu.
Seth suggests that often deja vu isn't a brain glitch. It's a moment where your current perception perfectly aligns with the perception of a probable self. You have been there. It's not in this shirt, in this timeline.
So, if these versions of us are out there running around doing surgery, painting pictures, do they ever talk? Is there a family reunion? Or is it just total silence between the limbs?
That leads us perfectly into Section 4 of the notes, the concept of root dreams.
Root dreams. When I first read this term, I thought of gardening. I pictured roots tangling under the soil. But Seth describes it more like a computer server or a communication hub.
It's a bit of both. Seth explains that deep in the dream state, deeper than the chaotic dreams about losing your teeth or showing up to school naked, there is a layer of root dreams. These are foundational experiences that the different probable selves share.
So Artist Rob and Dr. Rob both log into the system at night.
Unconsciously, yes. It's a way of maintaining the integrity of the whole identity. In these root dreams, they might exchange data. The artist might give the doctor a flash of creative inspiration to solve a really tricky medical diagnosis. The doctor might give the artist the discipline needed to finish a painting.
They support each other.
They are the same entity. They have a vested interest in each other's success. Seth says there may be flashes of realization in such dreams.
This makes me rethink sleep entirely. We treat sleep like a battery recharge. You plug the phone in, you turn it off, you wake up. But Seth is saying sleep is the work. Sleep is the board meeting.
Sleep is when the ego gets out of the way, so the real work can actually happen. When you are awake, you are intensely focused on the physical data, the traffic, the bills, the weather. When you sleep, you are focused on the inner data, And sometimes that work involves travel, which brings us to the flying.
Oh, the flying. I love this part because Seth takes a direct shot at Carl Jung and modern psychology here, and he does not hold back.
He really doesn't. Think about it. If you go to a therapist today and say, I dreamed I was flying, what do they tell you?
They say it's symbolic, it represents a desire for freedom. Or maybe it's sexual release. Or escaping your problems. It's a metaphor for ambition, like you want to fly high in your career.
And Seth says,
Seth says, quote, flying dreams, you see, are not symbolic of anything.
mic drop.
It's so blunt. Just a total rejection of the metaphor.
He is incredibly literal here. He says they are valid and actual experiences. When you dream you are flying, it's because in that dimension, purely and simply, you are flying. Your consciousness is mobile. It's not tethered to gravity in that state.
I have to say, that validates something I've felt for years. Because when you have a really good flying dream, it feels technical. I remember having dreams where I'm banking, I'm catching updrafts, I'm controlling my speed by leaning forward. It doesn't feel like an emotion. It feels like swimming in air.
That's exactly what Seth describes. He says,
Yeah.
you are manipulating a lighter form of body. You are learning the physics of a non-physical environment. You are actively testing your capabilities.
And what about the flip side? The falling. That terrible sensation where you jerk awake right before you hit the ground?
The standard psychological interpretation is anxiety, right? Insecurity, fear of failure, I'm falling behind in life. Seth says no. It's a, quote, sudden loss of form control.
It's a glitch.
Basically, you are projecting your consciousness, maybe returning to your physical body a little too quickly, or changing densities abruptly, and you lose stability. You literally drop. The sensation of falling is a physical reaction to a non-physical event.
Sudden loss of form control. I'm absolutely using that. Like, I didn't trip on the rug, honey. I just experienced a momentary loss of form control.
But look at the overarching pattern here. Whether it's ghosts or alternate lives or dreams, Seth is consistently moving us away from it's all in your head, it's symbolic, to it's real, it's mechanical.
He validates the subjective experience. He says that the internal world is just as objective as the external world. It has rules, it has physics, we just don't know them yet.
And because we don't know them, we call them dreams or hallucinations, and we just dismiss them. Seth is asking us to take the data of our own consciousness seriously. He's saying, don't dismiss the flying dream. That was real travel.
It reminds you that the waking world is just one station on the dial.
Correct. And sometimes the stations leak into each other. Which brings us to the final and perhaps strangest section of this session.
Yes, we have to talk about the peanut butter evidence.
The peanut butter evidence. It sounds like an indie band name.
It really does. But seriously, the tone shifts dramatically here in the transcript. We've been up in the clouds literally talking about flying and multiverses, and then suddenly Seth pivots to peanut butter.
This is a classic Seth maneuver. He knows that human beings need proof. We can listen to high-minded philosophy all day long, but at some point, the skepticism kicks in. We think, okay, this sounds nice, but are you just making this up? Is this just Jane's subconscious imagination running wild? So Seth often ends his sessions with ESP impressions. He scans the environment across time and space to bring back verifiable, hard data.
The scene in the notes is interesting. Jane pauses for a long time. She's totally dissociated. And then Seth starts rattling off this list. It's not profound wisdom. It's like a garage sale of random details.
Let's look at the specific data points he gives. He mentions a boy, 3 years old, the name Jerry, an incident with a birthday cake, and fire.
He specifies not disastrous, just an incident, like someone blew out the candles too hard.
Maybe a napkin caught fire.
Uh,
Then he mentions a pot-bellied stove, lace curtains, and the
Wow.
detail that stands out to everyone who reads this, he says the boy liked eating peanut butter, perhaps from a spoon.
It's so specific
Yeah.
and so incredibly mundane. Why would a multidimensional entity who just explained the profound secrets of death care about a kid eating peanut butter in the 1920s?
To prove that no detail is lost. If the mobility of consciousness is real, then Seth can zoom in on a specific mundane moment in 1923 just as easily as he can explain the architecture of the afterlife.
He connects this data to two men, right? Don Bolheim or Frederick Fell. These were publishers Rob and Jane were dealing with at the time.
Correct. Seth is trying to provide evidentiary material for these men. He is saying, I know who you are. I see your history. I see the pot-bellied stove in your childhood living room. He also mentions a school with a bell, a woman named Mary or Mary Ann, and a red car, or maybe a toy wagon.
It's grounding. It reminds us that while we are these giant, multi-limbed trees of consciousness, we are also just the kid eating peanut butter. The grand and the small are both part of the exact same picture.
And notice Jane's reaction after the session. The notes say that when she wakes up, she remembers a pot-bellied stove in her own childhood. She actually wonders if her own association helped pull that data through.
That brings up the whole translation aspect of channeling. Seth isn't typing on a keyboard, he's sending concepts through Jane's brain. So if he sends the concept of old-timey heat source, Jane's brain might grab the image of a pot-bellied stove she already knows to fill in the blank.
Exactly. It's a collaboration. But the specificity of Jerry and the peanut butter suggests it wasn't just Jane guessing. It was a targeted retrieval of information. It serves as a receipt.
A receipt, I like that.
It's Seth saying, here is the receipt for the information I just gave you. If I can see the peanut butter, you can trust me about the multiverse.
That is a great way to put it. It anchors the high-flying philosophy in gritty, sticky reality.
It does. And it leaves the listener, both Rob in 1966 and us right now, with a profound sense of wonder.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've looked at the hovering phase after death, that artistic mixing of colors. We've looked at the ghost taxonomy. We've analyzed the story of Rob the Doctor and the interconnected web of probabilities. We've debunked the symbolism of flying dreams. And we've ended on peanut butter from a spoon.
It's a lot to process for one session.
If you had to distill this down to one core takeaway for the listener right now, what is the so what? Why does this matter to my life on a Tuesday morning?
I think the takeaway is that you are not small. We are conditioned by society, by science, and even by religion to think of ourselves as these tiny, fragile biological accidents, limited to one timeline, one set of choices, marching linearly toward the grave.
We feel trapped by our choices. I made my bed, now I have to lie in it.
We do. But Seth is handing us a map that says no.
Mm.
You are vast. You are not just the person sitting in traffic right now. You are a multidimensional entity. You are exploring a dozen lives simultaneously. Your regrets are unfounded because the other versions of you did the thing you think you missed out on.
It gives you permission to just be here, doesn't it? Like, I don't have to be the doctor. The doctor is handling that over in his system. I can just be the artist or the accountant or the teacher and do this job well, knowing the rest of the team has the other bases covered.
It invites a massive sense of trust in your own being. And it invites adventure. Tonight, when you go to sleep, you aren't just shutting down. You are clocking in.
Clocking in for the night shift.
You are checking in on your probable selves. You are attending the board meeting in the root dreams. You might even go for a literal flight.
And maybe, just maybe, you're having a beer with the version of you that became a rock star.
Or the doctor.
Or the doctor. Hopefully he's paying doctors make more than podcast hosts.
In this reality, at least. In his reality, maybe people doing deep dives are the millionaires.
We can only hope. This has been a mind-bending session. For those of you listening, if you want to really get into the weeds of this, because we only scratch the surface here, you need to go to the source.
Absolutely. Do not just take our word for it. We are just the guides here. The map is in the books.
We strongly encourage you to study the Seth material books directly. There is so much more depth than we can ever cover in an hour. You can find the early sessions, including session 282, at the New Awareness Network website. That is sethcenter.com/the-early-sessions.
Go there, support the publisher, buy the books. It's a rabbit hole totally worth going down, and it supports the preservation of this incredible material.
So to you listening right now, sweet dreams, and I mean that literally, go find out who else you are.
See you in the dream state.
Good night, everyone.